Anna, we'll get to the weather in a moment, but first, the fight over spending in Washington is running headlong into the debate over so-called dreamers. And if lawmakers can't strike a deal on both, the federal government could shut down starting Saturday morning. Democrats are trying to save DACA. That's the program that protects immigrants brought into the U.S. illegally as children. The big question for the party, are they willing to accept a spending deal without a fix to protect dreamers? A few have already said their answer is no, and the president's reported remarks about blank hole countries have only hardened their stance. CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes has the details.
I did not hear that word used, no, sir.
The new Homeland Security Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, was in the room 5 days ago when the president used that now infamous term. Under oath, she claimed she missed it.
I don't dispute that the president was using tough language.
Democrats didn't buy it. Dick Durbin of Illinois was in the room himself.
What was that strong language?
Let's see. Strong language, there was... apologies, I don't remember a specific word. What I was struck with, frankly, as I'm sure you were as well, was just the general profanity that was used in the room by almost everyone.
The profanity has prompted blowback from what Mr. Trump called blank hole countries.
When Dick Durbin called me, I had tears of rage when I heard about this experience in that meeting.
New Jersey Democrat Cory Booker accused Nielsen of enabling bigotry.
Your silence and your amnesia is complicity.
The controversy has rocked negotiations over legal status for DACA recipients. Now, some Democrats say so-called dreamers have been in limbo long enough.
Without finding some responsible compromise, we're going to see the federal government shut down this Friday.
They're threatening to withhold their votes on an unrelated bill to keep the government running.
So if there's no deal on DACA, you'll vote no to fund the government?
I'm going to see what happens by the end of the week.
This has turned into a show.
South Carolina Republican Lindsey Graham insists the best way forward is a bipartisan DACA deal reached last week that was months in the making. He says the president initially seemed to back the measure.
It should be a bill of love.
But was steered away by immigration hardliners on his own staff, like Chief of Staff John Kelly and Senior Advisor Stephen Miller.
We cannot do this with people in charge at the White House who have an irrational view of how to fix immigration.
But those White House aides who Graham described as irrational actually have a lot of allies here on Capitol Hill. Conservatives who do not believe that people who were brought here to this country illegally as children should be rewarded with legal status. And so that has created a dilemma, Elaine, for GOP leaders, many of whom want to find a legislative fix and move on.
Well, Nancy, what are the hard lines that Republican lawmakers are setting when it comes to immigration reform?
Well, you've got a couple of camps. First of all, you have hardliners on immigration who say, no way, no how are they going to support any bill that gives anyone who came to this country illegally, whether they came here of their own volition or were brought here as children, legal status. They just think that that is going to incentivize other people to come here illegally. So that's the first group. There's a second group of Republicans who say that they could support that they believe in providing these young people with legal status, but that it has to be paired with measures to increase border security. And then the rub really comes when you discuss what sorts of border security measures you're talking about. Extra money to fund more agents at the border. Sure, Democrats say that they can support that. But when you're talking, for example, about eliminating immigration from certain countries altogether, those are the kinds of things that really set off alarm bells among Democrats and then cause them to turn against the legislation. And, you know, it really has to be said that if this issue was easy, then Democrats and Republicans would have found a solution for all kinds of immigration problems a long time ago. But this has always been an issue that is fraught with problems here on Capitol Hill long before you brought this White House and this president into the equation.
Yeah, it's been an intractable issue. What about Senator Lindsey Graham? It's been pointed out that his remarks seem to have been for an audience of one, President Trump. How optimistic is the senator that he can get his bipartisan deal back on track?
Well, so he really believes in this bipartisan deal that was worked out by a handful of Democratic and Republican senators over the past few months. But the reality is that that is only one set of negotiations that has been going on. You now have the number 2 Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate, so 4 leaders sitting down and trying to work out their own deal. There's another bill that is taking shape in the House. So what Lindsey Graham is trying to say, and his colleagues who worked with him on this bipartisan deal are saying it as well, is, look, nobody has been working on this as long as we have. We have the most comprehensive agreement. In fact, they believe that they can get it into legislative language by tomorrow night. They say everyone else who's trying to address this problem is just getting started, and it's going to take them months. So why not use the Graham agreement as sort of their basic template? That is the message that, as you put it, he was trying to send to the president, trying to urge the president to get back on his side. After all, these two are golf buddies, and Senator Graham thought that they had an understanding when it came to DACA, that Democrats would have to give a little and Republicans would have to give a little. But clearly, at the end of the week, the president, and more importantly, some of his top aides, thought that Republicans were giving too much, that this might anger the president's base. And so he suddenly turned around and rejected it. And Graham is eager not to see all that work go to waste.
Meantime, Nancy, we're facing a possible government shutdown at the end of the week, and we're seeing a lot of finger pointing right now. At this point, though, do we have any indications which party would actually get the blame should a shutdown occur?
The only indication we have right now is that each party will blame the other. Republicans will say Democrats are to blame. They held off. They wouldn't vote for government funding simply because they wanted to help this tiny, tiny sliver of the population, these young people who were brought to the country illegally. Democrats will argue no. Republicans control the House and the Senate, that they had a very sensible bipartisan deal in place, and if Republicans chose to reject it, that was their choice. And beyond that, they will point out that there are a number of Republican deficit hawks and defense hawks who had their own problems with the spending bill that led them to reject it on their side. So the politics are very complicated. What we do know from 2013 is that while everybody tends to get the blame when there is a government shutdown, it's kind of a pox on all of their houses, the party in power does get singled out for particular censure, and that has Republicans nervous. But again, politics has really been upended this year, so Democrats don't know what to think either, and that is what makes the next few days here on Capitol Hill such a high wire act for Republican and Democratic leaders alike.
All right, we know you'll be watching closely. Nancy Cortez on Capitol Hill for